And this is about David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, who's made his latest announcement about how to smash the smuggling gangs. Yep, good luck with that. A world-first policy. Yes, but it's a world-first policy. Maybe there's a reason why other countries haven't tried it, David Lammy. Just throwing that idea out there. But the idea is financial sanctions being used not just against, of course, terrorists, but also and organised criminals, being used against channel boat kingpins in a bid to cripple networks. Basically, tough new financial sanctions, treating the human traffickers like terrorists, cyber criminals and corrupt kleptocrats, allowing ministers to freeze the bank accounts, freeze property rights and other assets of people they suspect of trafficking. Also, traffickers being publicly named for the first time. Oh, they'll be so upset about that as well. Well, let's talk to Tony Smith about it. He's former head of the UK Border Force. Tony Smith, is there a reason this hasn't been done before?
Good morning, Julia. It has been done before. It's dressed up in a different way. So I suppose you could say that, well, we haven't seen any country say we're going to use sanctions in particular against individuals. But I do, as you know, a lot of international travel. I chaired a conference in Manila, in the Philippines, just in October, Julia. I mean, reports are all online. We've got reports from the United Nations, from Canada, from America, from Australia, who are all doing this sort of stuff, is trying to upstream disruption. But if you read those reports, you're really interested in this, it's almost impossible to disrupt gangs in source and transit countries, because a lot of this is endemic within the infrastructure of those countries, I'm afraid. On the Pacific Rim and in Africa, there are state and non-state actors that are involved in this business to one extent or another. We know that from our intelligence through the Border Five, so it is an international problem. They're right to say, yeah, we do need to do more overseas. But in my experience, sanctions only really work, Julia, when you can, when you're within your own jurisdiction, within the UK. So there are some in the UK that are involved in this business. I think they have been stepping up their efforts to try and find those. But when we're talking about activities in places like the Pacific Rim, in Africa, in source and transit countries, through the EU into the UK, these are hugely lucrative crime gangs that I think it's a very bold step for the government to say, well, look, we're going to tackle this.
Well, especially, and as you say, they're often working with local officials anywhere. The corruption levels are endemic in many of these countries. But this is the thing as well. Also, it's this idea, here's John Smith. He's involved in smuggling gangs. I mean, we haven't been able to track him down because he's clever enough not to be the person putting the people on the boats or blowing the boats up himself or pushing them off the beaches in Calais. He doesn't even answer the phone to anyone who does any of this. He's 10 phone calls away from this. The people working for him probably don't even know his name. But what he has been dumb enough to do is to put all of his assets in his personal name. And he's done all his money transfers. He says to people, when you pay to get on my boat, or when you pay the people who get on your boat and then those people pay me, can you do it in a BACS transfer so it's all traceable, so people can find it in my bank account? These people deal in suitcases full of cash. They deal with Swiss bank accounts and stuff. They're not traceable. These people aren't idiots. They're making a couple of million quid a week out of this. They're not fools.
Yeah, we've spoken about this before, Julia, and I think we need to realise that the criminal justice system in the UK is not capable of disrupting international organised crime gangs. And if you speak to anybody from the National Crime Agency, people who worked in this business, they will tell you that the best you can hope to do is disrupt these international gangs, and disrupting these gangs. I mean, I'm glad the Foreign Office are finally stepping up, because in my experience, Foreign Office haven't really shown much interest in this. And everyone says it's all down to the Border Force, it's down to the Home Office. Well, it's not actually. It is an international problem, but it has to be disruption, and it has to be an international effort. They need to get closer to the UN. They need to get closer to the Border Five, and they need to show a physical presence that are actually doing something. I'm seeing a lot of rhetoric coming out from the government. It's the right rhetoric, Julie. It is right. That,
happy for people to say the right things. I'm happy for them to try. I'd just like some of it to work eventually. But, I'm old-fashioned on delivery. I don't know.
The proof of the pudding is in those numbers that you report on every week, Julia. Those boats that you're showing pictures of them now coming up onto the beaches in the UK. The proof of the pudding on whatever they're doing, whether it's upstream or with France or here, will be in those numbers. And as well as I do, those numbers are up. They're continuing to come across. There is no real deterrent for some of those nationality cohorts. The hotels are still being used. You know, the backlogs are still there.
Well, now they've got the promise, they'll probably be rushed through and they'll be given the nod and allowed to stay, and then they can live here to their heart's content. I mean, when those numbers have gone up, and we've got all those reports about them going up, Tony, is that down to a failure of policy? Like, oh, you know, the Tories are saying that's because you abandoned the Rwanda policy, which was never actually put in place. I don't think it was much of a deterrent personally anyway. But is it the fault of what the Labour government has done or hasn't done, or is it down to, you know, things like the weather or the conditions on the channel? What do you think it's down to?
It is down to the weather, mainly. We have red days, green days. You know, the Border Force monitors the weather, Julia. We do our resource deployments around the weather.
They're probably more accurate than the weather forecast we look at, aren't they?
But we can't control that. I mean, I think that, to be fair to them, they have gone on a case clearance mission. They have got removals up on some of the easier to remove nationalities because they've ditched the Rwanda plan. I don't agree with you on what you're saying about Rwanda. I thought it was a really bold attempt, actually, by the last...
If it was on a grand scale, if it was literally you arrive on a boat, you're off to Rwanda, that would have worked. That's basically what Australia did. They were going to ship 300 people there. It wasn't going to be a deterrent.
We were going to do that, Julia, but we couldn't because of the legal frameworks under which
but even if they shipped 300 people, that's not a deterrent.
Well, it depends. I mean, there was some evidence of displacement to Ireland. There was some evidence from intelligence out of Calais that people were thinking twice about getting in one of those boats if they were, as you say, going to go to Manston, straight to an airfield and straight to Rwanda. I think that would have been it. But, of course, we'll never know now, will we? Because it didn't happen. But I haven't seen anything that this government has put in place that's going to deal with the problem of people coming from countries where we can't remove people. What are you going to do with them? If you can't send them back to France, you're going to have to let them stay. That will still be the pull factor, and the numbers will still come, and we haven't been able to smash that either with the Conservative government or with the Labour government.
I'm kind of at the point where, you know, we pick them up once they hit our half of the channel, and then with our boats just take them straight back to those beaches at Calais. We just put them in boats back, literally off you go. You're just not ever going to come to our shores. End of. Always good to talk to you, Tony Smith. Great to get your expertise always on these things. Former head of the UK Border Force. Certainly, Philip Ingram, more expertise than we're going to get from David Lammy.
Oh, very much so. And David Lammy is bringing out soundbite politics, which is not based on reality. You know, he's just trying to deflect from what's going on elsewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not the first time it's been tried. They tried it elsewhere. Yeah. And it doesn't really work.
Well, exactly. And there's laws in place at the minute to take money off people, unexplained wealth orders, Proceeds of Crime Act and the rest of it. But yeah, it's there. It's dressing it up in a different way to try and deflect from what's hurting the government elsewhere at the moment with the economy and with the rape gang issues.